I've been asked to come in today because I'm friends with one of your colleagues and I'm a mental health nurse, so know a little bit, you could say. I'm going to talk to you about what is mental health. We'll discuss, we've only got 45 minutes, so this is just a brief overview, but just maybe a little bit about some signs and symptoms and some strategies that you can use to help prevent mental illness, but also to help you cope if you do have any of these conditions. And I'll also show you some signposting to local services that are available to you. So, when we say mental health, what do you think that means? What would you describe it as? It's like being at school with me, by the way, because I do.
How you feel and how well you feel, whether you're happy or sad, depressed, or the whole range, I would think, mental health.
So, yeah, and that's exactly right. I think in society we have a tendency to think about health as not being ill, not having a disease. And if you look at the World Health Organization, their definition of what health is says health is sort of a state of complete psychological, physiological and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So you're quite right, it's not just thinking about being well, being unwell, it's about looking at our holistic needs, what's happened to us socially, physically, and how they all interlink, and are we promoting our own well-being. So thinking about mental health particularly, it's are we able to thrive, are we able to reach our potential, and also being aware that actually there's loads of stresses in life, a lot of things that are beyond our control, but can we have factors and things in place to help us when this happens? What coping strategies can we implement? So obviously there's quite a few leaflets here, but what would you say the most common mental illnesses are?
Anxiety.
Depression?
Yeah, both of those are the most common. There are a lot of mental health diagnoses. I've named a few here, but within different conditions you also have different sub-conditions. For instance, personality disorder, you can get borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. So there's a lot out there, but these are the more common ones. Is there any on there that you're not familiar with or haven't heard of? Cool. So I'm just going to ask you what is schizophrenia? And the reason is some people know, but some people, there's a lot of misconceptions around schizophrenia. So if I said to you to say in a sentence what is schizophrenia, what would you say it was?
Say one thing now.
No, it's fine. There are no wrong answers in here.
Is it a split personality disorder?
That's what a lot of people think, so you're right in, that's a common misconception. It's not quite that. Has anyone got any other ideas?
Like when you have no control over your actions?
That's one of the symptoms of it sometimes, yeah. It's actually just a distorted sense of reality, so your perception is slightly off and the way you view the world isn't actually what's sort of happening. And just to break that down for you, in schizophrenia we can have what's called positive symptoms and negative symptoms. So a positive symptom of schizophrenia is anything that's additional to your personality. So it could be those hallucinations, delusions, you start to hear voices. A negative symptom is something that's taken away from your personality. So you feel low, you feel tired, you feel lethargic. And one part, and very common in schizophrenia, is psychosis. But this is where people get a bit blurred. Psychosis is not schizophrenia. Psychosis can form part of any mental illness. You can be depressed with psychosis. You could have a psychotic personality disorder. And all psychosis is referring to those positive symptoms. So when you hallucinate or when you have delusions, so you can actually have schizophrenia without psychosis, although it's not common. What you were referring to when you said split personality is a condition called multiple personality disorder. And we don't have it very often in England, but it's more diagnosed in America. It does exist. And I'm speaking to the other group, and I'm actually going to in an email send a Vice documentary, because basically this is when people have lots of different alter egos and different personalities. And it's often related to trauma in childhood. And this documentary is about an English woman who has many different personalities, and she's an artist, and it's quite interesting because it shows you her different artwork in her different alter states. And she had a baby who's grown up now, but she doesn't have any recollection of giving birth or being pregnant because it was in one of her personalities that doesn't exist anymore. It's very interesting, so if you are interested, I'll send you the link to find out more about that. But have you seen the film Split? He's got multiple personality disorder. Me, Myself and Irene, if you've seen that, it's just when you have more than one personality. So, when you look at research into mental illness, often society would associate mental illness with violent crime, aggression, and that's because people who are experiencing mental health crisis can be aggressive, and often they're paranoid, scared, and they lash out to protect themselves. However, if you look at stats into mental illness, people who are mentally unwell are less likely to be a perpetrator, more likely to be a victim of abuse. And this is because of their vulnerability. So actually, what we see in society and society's attitudes towards mental illness is actually wrong, because the statistics show it's not the case. I think if you look back historically, we've always portrayed it negatively through books, through films, through music. And people just are fearful, really, a lot of the time. And I guess nowadays we have seen a shift in the last 10 years, and you know, I'm here today, people are aware of mental health a bit more and more able to talk about it. A lot of celebrities have come forth about their own mental health, like Prince Harry, Prince William. They started campaigning for Heads Together, talking about how they experience bereavement and their mental health. And what's his name, James Arthur, do you know, the X Factor guy? He's like an ambassador for the charity Sian. So a lot more people are encouraging this dialogue, which is great. But I think what it remains is it is a taboo subject. And if we're thinking about like the workplace today, there's often a reluctance to say I'm not feeling great mentally, because you might be fearful of, you know, being persecuted at work, not getting that promotion, being seen as weak, being discriminated against by your peers. So people do find it difficult. And another reason for that is, you know, if you break your leg, everyone knows you've broken your leg. But if you're off work for 5 months with anxiety, you can't see it, you don't know what that person is experiencing, you can't relate or empathise to them feelings. So it's harder for people to sort of come forth with this. And I think, just to mention with that, I just would say that every single one of us at some point in our lives will experience mental health, whether we've had a stressful day at work and we feel anxious, we're going through a breakup, a bereavement, we're moving house. But actually, if there's one thing I can get across to you, whether you want to bring it up to your colleagues or your best friends or your family, if you tell somebody you're feeling low and they care about you, they're going to react positively, they're going to want to support you because they've probably felt like that themselves. If you put yourself in the shoes of your friend comes to you and says, I'm feeling depressed, are you going to go, great, go somewhere else? You're not. You're going to want to help. So try and remember that if you are experiencing these things, people aren't as judgmental as we think they are. A lot of the time it's in our heads. So how many people a year have a mental health diagnosis? Do you know?
As like percentage?
A ratio.
1 in 4.
Yeah. So this statistic's everywhere. 1 in 4 people have a mental health diagnosis a year. What do you think about that? Any thoughts?
Not surprised.
No.
You're
I'm
not?
surprised it's not higher.
I think it probably is higher. What this statistic shows is people who've gone to mental health services have gone to their GP and said they're suffering. However, as I've said, people are reluctant to talk about mental illness. And if you look at other statistics, so we know that suicide is the leading cause of death in young males, sadly. Yet, if you look at data into this, these young males often aren't known to mental health services, haven't come forth and talked about it. So if you think that's the statistic we say, but this is a leading cause of death, that is a gross misrepresentation of what is actually going on. And like we said, we all, at some point in our life, will experience these emotions. So I think, yeah, we don't know really, that's the big answer to that. I'm going to just give you a little overview of anxiety and depression. And like I said, there's so much more to mental health, but these are the most common illnesses. Anxiety is actually a physiological, so a physical response to a perceived threat. And basically, you all know fight or flight. When we are sort of at risk, our body will either fight the perceived threat or will run away. So when people are anxious, their body goes into this fight or flight response, and you'll get those physical symptoms, increased heart rate, you'll start to shake. What happens, however, with this is, do you know what cortisol is? It's called the stress hormone. It's sort of a chemical within the body that triggers when you're in your fight or flight response and helps to release the adrenaline and all these things to happen. But long-term overuse of cortisol can have severe impacts on you, not just mentally, but physically. It's linked with cancers, it's linked with chronic heart failure, anything like that. So when we think about mental illness, we need to think holistically and understand that anxiety has physical as well as psychological implications. Some common signs of anxiety are just negative thought processes. So, for instance, some of you work in sales. If you don't hit your target, you don't get to that sale. You start to think, that's my job, I'm not a good salesman. Actually, that's catastrophizing because you do get sales, otherwise you'd have been out on your back years ago, you wouldn't be in this role. So it's about recognising when our thought processes are irrational, and this is a sign in anxiety. We all do it, but it's when it becomes unmanageable. It happens all the time. We catastrophise, we think negatively. So that's how anxiety presents. Depression next. Now, again, like I've said, we'll all feel depressed at times, we'll all feel sad. But to be diagnosed as depressed, this needs to be for at least 2 weeks, because that acknowledges that things can be stressful that will make you sad. You need to have 5 of these symptoms, with at least 2 of them being one of them, and loss of interest. Depression is linked with serotonin. Do we know what serotonin is?
Happy hormone.
Yeah. So everybody calls serotonin happy hormone, and that's because it makes you happy. So in the brain, we have what we call neurotransmitters, which are basically just you send a chemical message from one cell to the other. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, and what it does is it's responsible for making you feel good, for increasing your appetite, for helping you sleep. And when we look into mental illness, there's so many different causes to depression. It could be your work, it could be your social factors, it could be a life event. But also, one of the factors is in your brain, your chemistry, your neuroanatomy, and your neurochemistry can be unbalanced, and that's where serotonin comes in. If we look at people with depression, they have lower rates of serotonin, often. And so it is treated through drugs that work on serotonin receptors. Have you ever heard of SSRIs? So this is a mouthful, but it stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And basically all it does, antidepressants of these branch, block your serotonin receptors so you have more serotonin floating around in your body. And serotonin makes you feel happy, you feel happier. That's basic science in antidepressants. So, when thinking of mental health, we have to acknowledge that although there's social factors at part, there's also physiological factors as well. Bipolar is one type of depression, and this is characterised by periods of mania and periods of depression. I'm only going to brief over bipolar, but the reason for mentioning it is it's less common for people with bipolar to have what we know as rapid cycling moods, and that's when your mood fluctuates day to day, hour to hour. It is more common, I'm not saying does not exist, it does, but it is more common for periods of bipolar to be long term, so a couple of months of low mood followed by a couple of months of manic mood. Has anyone ever met or experienced mania that you'll share? It can be quite difficult to manage because people in a manic phase will potentially be more risk-taking because they often have ideas of grandiose delusions, they believe they're invincible. So often we don't realise that a manic stage is also something that we need to manage correctly. We see a lot in mental health services. Bipolar is diagnosed a lot and treated by medication through GPs. I've got a bugbear with this because I sometimes think that, have you heard of borderline personality disorder? This often gets misdiagnosed as bipolar because in borderline personality disorder, people are very impulsive and will have rapid fluctuating moods. So my point of telling you this is, if you know or are experiencing this yourself or know someone who's experiencing it, assessment is crucial because if you go to a GP and you get given antidepressants for bipolar, but you've actually got borderline personality disorder, you won't get better. Because borderline personality disorder is associated with childhood trauma and therefore you need therapy that works on past experiences to sort of work out those difficulties. So assessment is key on these sort of things. I'm not going to go into too much on stress because it's very similar to anxiety, but we all experience stress in the workplace. And all I can say is it's important to kind of know what situations are particularly stressful to you and work out strategies that can mitigate the stress for you. If you can't avoid it, what can you do to manage it? It's often your outlook on things, really. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some preventative strategies and coping strategies. We are really reactive to mental illness. We wait till we're at the point of breaking point and then we go and get help. But actually, if you can, these are all stuff you know. You're going to think, I know this, but I'm just going to remind you of why it's important. Again, like I said earlier, if you can start to bring these strategies into your life and make it part of your lifestyle, then when a crisis does hit, you've already got some coping strategies in place that you can maybe increase as well as other treatments. So, I'm put exercise first because I think it's probably the most important thing for mental health. And that links with, because we spoke about serotonin, you produce more serotonin after exercise, and endorphins also make you happy, like your happy hormone. And they're in your body. It's clinically proven that if you exercise, rates of anxiety and depression are decreased, and therefore I can't emphasise how important it is. GPs are now giving out parkruns to people with depression because they're starting to recognise that we need to be more proactive in how we treat a mental illness. I know it's hard to sometimes make time to do 30 minutes exercise 3 times a week. So if that is difficult for you with work, life, family commitments, if you can try even just 10 minutes a week to start, where you get up 10 minutes earlier, you could put on potentially like Joe Wicks or just a HIIT workout, gradually just build it into your life. Me personally, when I'm stressed, I eat loads, I'll drink wine as a coping strategy, and I don't exercise, and then I'm all or nothing, and then when I'm feeling great, I'm exercising all the time. It's not really about that, it's about each week. If you've had a week where you've done nothing, forget it, it's the next week. Try every day to put little things in place that will help you. Because if we haven't got health, we haven't got anything really, have we? It's so important. And it also links with physical health. This is another biggie. Sleep. Who gets 8 hours a night? I'm jealous. It's really important, that's what sleep sort of society recommends. But, do you know what sleep hygiene is? What is it?
It's like getting into a routine where you've got like a you don't do certain things before bed and you don't wake up in a certain way, whatever it is, to make sure you've got some kind of like shut off point for your sleep.
Perfect, yeah. So when you think of sleep, it's like a clock. Our body is like a body clock, we call it. But the idea is if you can try to get to bed at a similar time every night and get up at a similar time every day, that is optimal sleep for your health. That is what you should do. Problem is, a weekend hits, you stay up later. Now, we don't do this, but I'm going to tell you the best thing to do is still get up at the same time, even if it means you're only a 4 hours sleep rather than 8. Because it's more important to get sleep hygiene than to get the 8 hours. This is what our body needs. However, I'm a realist, it's not always going to happen. Just try where you can to try and go to bed at a similar time in the week, at least. And don't be guilty of, I'm bad for this, I'll just watch another episode. So you're staying up an extra hour that you don't need to stay up. This is so important for your mental health. So like you said, try and reduce screen time before bed and allow yourself just like 20 minutes even to relax, listen to a nice music, read a book. I love a pun, but it doesn't happen overnight. Just take it each day as it comes. If you are suffering from insomnia and things, you might want to go and talk to your GP, but relaxation, sometimes medication is appropriate. And some medications will cause insomnia and you just need to speak to your GP if that's the case. Hungry is actually a thing. It's not what men say. Hungry is a thing. We do have low mood and anxiety when our blood sugar's lower. So important things, I'm bad for breakfast. Even if you just have a banana, eat breakfast because it will affect your mood. We all know this anyway, like about eating healthy, but 2 things I'd take away from today. Water is key. Try to drink more water than caffeine. I love coffee, but don't have coffee for every drink. We are like 80% of our body is water, so it affects your mood. Drink it as much as you can. It also gives you opportunity to take a break. If you go and fill up your bottle with water, it gets you away from the desk. The other thing that I'm a real advocate of is gut health. So does anyone take probiotics or know what they are? So in our guts, we have like really good bacteria and bad bacteria. And because of like Western diets and use of antibiotics and contraceptives, we tendency to have an overgrowth of the bad bacteria. And that can really affect your physical health, but also your mental health. So it's a very new area of research, but in the next 10 years, we're going to see so much coming out about anxiety and gut health because there's so much new evidence to suggest they are linked. Problem is when you go to the GP and you get given antibiotics, they don't give you probiotics too. We need to be trying to get this more into our life to prevent illness, really. So, for those of you that are interested, there's some articles on it here. But effectively, probiotics are things like acidophilus that you can buy in tablet form from Holland & Barrett, but also you can just eat in your diet through like natural probiotic yogurts or apple cider vinegar tonics, anything that's fermented, so sauerkraut. And these promote the good bacteria, which is linked with your mood. You can also take things like antifungals, so natural ones are like onions, garlic, coconuts, because they help to kill off the bad bacteria. And I can't emphasise, if there's nothing else you take away from today, think about your gut health and how day to day you can try and improve your gut health, because it will. You might notice a change in your mood if you do. I'm really pro that. Does anyone practice meditation or mindfulness? You're great. No, it's great. I love it.
I've just been away for a long time and out of routine, so it's really important for, make sure you get back into it. So reading lots of stuff on this.
It's so important. Again, so mindfulness, for those of you that don't know, comes from Eastern philosophy, so like Buddhism, and the idea is you're just focusing on the present moment and thinking of the now. So like, as humans, our brains will worry about the past, can't change it, or worry about the future and things that half the time don't happen, they're just our own irrational fears. And so the philosophy goes that we need to teach ourselves to be more focused on the now, because actually now is when we live in, that is the moment. So you can do a lot of different techniques, which I won't have time to show you, but I've put some links on the slide, and if you go on Google and type it in, there's so much out there now. But what you want to potentially try and do is learn a few techniques, whether it's something you're interested in and you want to make part of your life, or it's just techniques for when you are feeling stressed out, you can use them to bring yourself down. Right, so going back to fight or flight response, when we're anxious, we have loads of cortisol in our body. If you can learn breathing techniques, it will help to tell your body you're calm. Your cortisol, your adrenaline will release. You won't be in the fight or flight response, you'll be relaxed. So if you are feeling stressed, you've had a bad client, you've had a bad meeting, and then you pick up the phone, you could potentially fight and make a bad decision professionally. So if you are feeling anxious or angry at work, 5 minutes, go to the toilet, do some breathing exercises, you won't be in your fight or flight response, you might get the deal. It's important. The other thing is with mindfulness, again, I'm a research nurse as well, so I've done a lot into research. This is evidence-based again. It's not just a hippie thing saying, oh, take some breathing time. No, it's proven scientifically to work with this. If meditation isn't for you, that's okay. You can do anything mindfully. So if you're into art, drawing, don't have any music on, just draw. If you like dancing or sports, focus on what you're doing. So an example that's used a lot in mindfulness teaching is they'll give people a chocolate and tell them to not like shove their face with loads of Maltesers, but just suck it and taste it and focus on the sensations. Or sit outside and listen to the birds, look at the trees. So this man, walking through the park, worrying about everything, or walking through the park and being in the park, being in the moment. So if, for those of you who want to give this a go, what I would say is at first it's really frustrating. So I've done mindfulness for years now, and I'm such an overthinker, I thought I'll never, ever be able to be mindful. But now I actually can get on quite well with meditation, and I've moved a long way 4 years later. And that's not regular practice either, it's just as and when I can. And what you need to accept is that our brains are wired to think. We worry. When you're doing these activities, if you start to think, don't beat yourself up, just don't engage the thoughts, because the idea is not to think, it's not to engage your thoughts, you will think. So one analogy is your brain's a puppy, and you know how puppies will just run everywhere and won't sit still, a bit like myself. You're training your brain to get the puppy to come back. So the thought comes in, what am I going to have for tea? Just let it pass. don't start going, well, I need to go to the shop, I've got this ingredient. And if you do that, fine. Stop and start again on whatever you were doing mindfully. So if you're doing counting to 10 breath work and you're focusing on counting to 10 and you've realised I've just been thinking about going to my friends for 10 minutes, start back at 1, whatever, it's fine, don't beat yourself up. And like exercise, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So just practice really. Mindful movement is another one. I'm really into hula hooping, and what I've noticed when I hoop, I don't think about anything other than hooping, but that for me, and maybe the music, I'm not worrying about anything else. So you've got to find what suits you. I mean, like, it might not be hooping, although I love it. Whatever you like, try it for yourself. Does anyone do any of these? Yoga's a good one because it's breath work as well. Do you know what I mean by grounding techniques? What's the grounding technique?
Oh, why did I nod?
I know.
I don't know, it's a bit hard. Yeah, it's hard to put into words, I guess. But it's, I mean, I've done some stuff before that I think makes you do sort of clenching your hands or as tight as you can for say 5 seconds or 10 seconds and then letting go and just focusing on the experience. Or if you're feeling anxious, try and concentrate on the connection of your sort of feet to the floor.
Brilliant,
or something like
yeah.
that.
Exactly that, yeah. And also, like, so in anxiety and panic attacks, it is just to ground you, to get you back to reality. So, you've got 5 senses. Some people find it quite helpful if feeling stressed out to use their senses. So, like lavender, having some lavender in your bag, feel stressed, smell something, have a nice fabric in your bag, or have the chocolate and do the chocolate meditation. That's one of my favourites. Just grounding yourself, use your senses, feel something. It's, again, evidence-based. But one thing to say with mindfulness, where you might be able to bring it in gradually, try to take your break when you eat your lunch, because we all sit there, we've got our phone, we've got our emails. Actually, you can eat your lunch mindfully. You can go and sit outside and just focus on the sandwich you're eating for 5 minutes and how it tastes. That is being mindful. You can brush your teeth mindfully. You can drive your car mindfully. That's hard because our brains wander. But even for 5 minutes, just focusing on driving, really, really focus. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Yeah. Any questions on mindfulness? It changed my life. So there's some apps that can help you for beginners. You can get free ones. Some of these you have to pay for. Okay. And this is just a motto, really. I started a new job in the last year, and my work-life balance went like this. And I've had to check myself to remind myself, I work to live, not the other way around. No matter how stressed we feel at work, it isn't worth our health, because if we haven't got a health, we haven't got anything. So try, no matter, I'm guilty of when I'm stressed, all my coping strategies go down. I'll sit at my desk for 8 hours and eat crisps and drink coffee. But actually, do they pay me enough to detriment I'm a mental health professional. Am I being paid enough to detriment my own mental health? No. So just check in with yourself from time to time. And when I used to work in practice, so clinically, an emergency meant someone could die. But my boss now, because I work in a university, she'll go to me, there's never an academic emergency, so what? And you're like, actually, you're right. It might feel like an emergency because there's a deadline, but it's nobody who's going to die. And it's hard in sales, I think, when you're target driven, but actually, we can't always get every sale. Just remind yourself and tell yourself the positive affirmations, it's okay, we can't achieve everything. We all have negative coping strategies, such as we like a beer, we might like a cigarette, whatever. Just moderate them. I'm not saying don't do them, we're all realists, but if you do, you notice you do it 3 times a week, can you swap one of them up for a run instead? People who need to be active and to be mindful are the ones that say they haven't got time for it. They're the ones that need it the most. If you look on your phone, you know them apps now that say 200, more like it, 2 hours of my day is gone on my phone. Actually, it's a waste of my time. I could have spent an hour of that reading a book, going for a run, hooping, because actually social media is linked with depression and anxiety, and that's because everyone gives their best life and makes themselves look amazing with filters. It's not real. So if you are feeling depressed and anxious and you go on social media, you're going to actually feel worse at the end of it, because you'll be like, I'm depressed, everyone else's life's amazing. Tell yourself, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and do something I love doing, because there's more to life than social media and work. I'm going to go and, even if you just watch your favourite movie, like anything, just make time for yourself. And socialising is a good one too. Okay, so organisation, big one at work. Again, if you feel like you're drowning, we are only human. The best thing is prioritising. What is the most urgent thing that I need to do? Because if you're anything like me, when I'm stressed, I forget to do this, I procrastinate, and I'll just be like, oh, this little bit of admin, that isn't urgent, that probably never needs to be done, will get done, oh, I'll go on social media. When actually then I'm making myself more stressed because the real matter isn't getting done. So just actually trying each day to say what is a priority, what is achievable, be realistic about your goals. This takes practice, but if you can manage your own expectations and learn to manage the expectations of others. I'm a yes girl, and I shoot myself in the foot. I agreed to do a lecture the other day that I don't know what I'm talking about. So I had to go back and say, actually, I don't think it's appropriate. If I had managed the expectations in the first place, I'd have managed the situation, because now I look worse, and if I just go, it's not for me, I haven't done that skill for years. So manage the expectations of others. Yeah. So just a few more things, and this is just so cheesy and you'll feel ridiculous doing it, but being positive and kind to yourself is so important. Does anyone know or have imposter syndrome? What it is? So I have this, and I've realised a lot of people have it, but it's where you are in your job and you think, why am I in this job? I shouldn't be in it, I'm not skilled to do this. Everyone's going to catch me out as a failure. I'm not competent. And we're all guilty of not feeling that we're good enough. It's an example of that. It's really common in like certain fields of work. But actually, if you tell yourself, I'm not good at something, you start to believe that, and your body goes into that fight or flight, anxious state. It's about just having a word with yourself. So for instance, I'll come here today, rather than feeling nervous, you say, I can do it, I'm a mental health nurse, I know what I'm talking about, rather than, oh, that's intimidating, they're all going to be looking at me. Focusing on the positives, really. So if you think about therapy, one of the common kinds of therapy we use in mental health for anxiety is cognitive behavioural therapy. And that does this. So this is what we do. If people are negative, we challenge the negative with positives. So I'm a failure. You're a failure. Tell me a time you've succeeded. Tell me another time you've succeeded. It's the same concept, just learning to be kinder to yourself and self-love. So there's a lot of TED Talks and there's a lot of information on, I can't do this personally, but telling yourself you love yourself in the mirror every day. I couldn't do that, but Davina McCall, who's had mental health problems historically, drug addictions, she swears by this, and she says she started every day telling herself, I like myself, and now she got up to the stage of being able to love herself. I wouldn't be able to do that, and you've got to do what's right for you. But the message from that is the same, just stop giving yourself a hard time and just be grateful and like yourself a bit more, concentrate on the positives a bit more. So does anyone keep a gratitude list or a self-love list or know what they are? So a gratitude list, the idea is that every day you write one thing down that you're grateful for. So it could be simple, I'm grateful I'm not starving, I'm grateful I've got a job. And you can add to it. And the idea is that when you're thinking negatively and, oh my God, my life's so terrible, I haven't achieved, I haven't got the mortgage, my friends have got the mortgage, my car is a hairdryer, my friend drives a Mercedes. It's about focusing on, I've got a car, there's people starving in the third world, but I've got a car, I've got a job. And it's just about realising, again, being more positive. And just mantras. I have to tell myself when I'm nervous that I'm calm, because if I tell myself I'm nervous, then I'm in big trouble, because I'll be like, so yeah. What I said stands. Use your support networks. We've all been through things. We all understand. We're all empathetic people. You might not find everyone is, but you know who you can talk to. Talk to people. There's a lot of research into the reason males are more likely to commit suicide is they don't talk as freely as women about their emotions. It's that 75% of suicides are males compared to 25% women. Have a chat, boys and girls, you know, we need to just be talking more freely about these things. So just quickly now to mention, with regard to treatment, it's about thinking holistically. So we look at an early intervention model, and what that means is the sooner you get help, the better the outcomes are. The less likely you are to relapse, the more likely you are to recover. I won't go into the science, but if you look at brain scans of people with mental illness, it can affect grey matter, and the longer left untreated, the more areas are damaged. So when people become unwell, there's a lack of acceptance, a denial, a reluctance to get help because of fear, potentially. Often this fear is, I'm going to get sectioned, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose my children. But actually, that's a myth, because mental health services are primarily community services. Old school are back in the days of asylums. Unless you are really unwell, we avoid sectioning you. We want you to be helped within your community, because we know your social needs affect your mental health. So if you know anyone who's in a crisis, it's not as scary as you think it is, and there's a lot of help out there, so just be aware of that. You can access therapy online, free therapy through the NHS, which is a talking therapy. Improving access to psychological therapies, we're all able to access that. But sometimes, in different areas, waiting times can be up to 6 months. It's not great if you're unwell to wait 6 months. So I would say, always, you can self-refer, you can go through a GP, get the referral, but in the meantime, think of other things. Private counselling can be up to £50 an hour, but you can get low-cost counselling, which is like a tenner, and it might be a student, but it's still better than nothing in the interim, and it's really good. Some of this low-cost counselling is better than paying 50 quid, so just know what's available. Medication. It's scientifically proven to help, but just remember, it's not a cure. So my analogy I'll use is, if I'm dehydrated and I've got a headache from dehydration, I can take the paracetamol to get rid of the headache, but I'm still dehydrated and I need the water. So don't think of medication as the only fix. It can help alongside everything else. We need to think holistically. That's that one really. I've just provided some of your local services, so I'll get this sent to you. But effectively, you can have anonymous services if you just want someone to talk to, or if you want more specialised care, you can go through your trust, and this will get you a referral. You can go through your GP. If your GP gives out an antidepressant and you actually want more specialist care, you can ask for that secondary care referral to a psychiatrist, to a trust, because you're entitled to that secondary assessment by specific professionals. Often these charities are anonymous as well, 24 hours a day. And there's loads out there, but these are the ones I could find in your area. And just to say, if anyone is in a crisis, and by crisis I mean an imminent, immediate risk to themselves or others, you just need to phone an ambulance or the police or go to A&E. You can't waste time in that, because if somebody is experiencing psychotic episode, they can be having command hallucinations and there is a risk there. You just need to get help straight away. Here's some links to mindfulness. This one is for students, but the reason I put it on there is because it's so good to give you a basic overview and some easy guided meditations to start. But I mean, there's just so much out there on it. But I would just look into things that work for you, really. And all I can say, if there's anything to take home from this, it's okay to have a mental health problem at some point, we all will. Just know where to go and don't be afraid to get support if you need it, because that's better for you long term. Yeah, any questions? Go on.